Hello, Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Oh, I'm so excited to be with you for this Dating to Married webinar. I'm so excited about this because after 22 years of marriage, it just keeps getting better for me and for my husband. And I'm so thankful. And, I have young adults as children in my family. They're not children anymore, they're young adults. And so this issue of dating for marriage, all that kind of stuff keeps coming up. It keeps coming up in a lot of different ways. And so if you have been wondering, how is it that you could find a spouse, or maybe you know somebody who is thinking about that, how can they find a godly spouse? Where is that godly spouse? Then I can't wait to share with you a little bit more about my story because it's pretty dang cool. Even just the other night, I was talking with one of our sons who's 20 years old, and he was like, Mom, your story is like really unusual and really amazing. Like, you need to be telling people about this. And so I wanted to just take a moment and spend some time pouring into you. I'm open to your questions, I'm open to your comments, and I really would love to hear how you're doing and what your biggest issues are with finding a spouse for marriage. So, full disclosure, I'm totally a hardcore Christian. I love Jesus, I love his word. And I've been living a Christian life for a very long time now. I think I first got into Jesus when I was 6. And I remember I was at a puppet show and our family was Catholic. And the puppet show was actually at a church that was Assemblies of God. And so they were preaching that Jesus died for my sins and that by him dying, he paid the price for my sins that separated me from God. Because God is perfect. He can't have sin in the way of us. And so he's got to deal with the sin issue. And his way of dealing with the sin issue was to offer Jesus. And Jesus is our savior. He is the light of the world. He does save us not just from our sin, but he also, by dying on the cross and resurrecting, he gives us the power of the Holy Spirit, which gives us the power to change. So there's a spiritual dynamic going on in our lives. When we try to change and we can't change and it's really, really hard, we can go to Jesus and he, through the power of the Holy Spirit, gives us the power to change. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen in the snap of a fingers, but it will happen. So if you are looking for a spouse and you're thinking about this and you're thinking about how am I going to find the spouse that I want, let me just tell you my story really quickly. So, or maybe not so quickly. So, in the summer of 1998, I was 19 years old and I had just ended a long-term relationship. I had done something regrettable in another relationship. And I'm smiling because not because I'm happy about that, but because I think all of it, some of us, most of us have done something regrettable in a relationship. But God was still faithful to me. My prayer from the time I was 13 was that I would marry a godly man and one who had saved himself for marriage. And God did that. He gave me the desire of my heart. I can't even believe how amazing and beautiful that is. And then let me just tell you that coming out of a long distance relationship that was pretty emotionally unhealthy, when I think back on it, it was not a good relationship. But he loved the Lord. And so I was like, maybe this will work. Ultimately, it did not work. And I went back to college and in the fall, well, actually it was in August. And I remember going into my room in my apartment. I had a roommate who was a female, awesome lady who also loved the Lord. And I remember praying in my prayer journal and like listing all the characteristics I wanted in a husband. And so I wrote down, like, I wanted him to love the Lord. I wanted him to put the Lord above everything else, right? Really love the word of God. I also wanted him to be a singer. I also wanted him to be interested in media. I also wanted him to be, interested in different people in different countries. And I didn't want him to be like closed-minded. I really wanted him to be somebody who cared about the world and who cared about the Great Commission. So I wrote the whole list down, ladies. I wrote the whole list down. And I'll tell you, not even kidding, within a week, I met my husband. Now, I didn't know he was my husband when I met him, but I met him. And it was amazing. Like it was so perfectly for me. It's a really interesting story to look back on because I think right now it's a really popular idea that there's just one person for you in the world. And I was giving my 20-year-old some pushback on that because he was like, yeah, I think there is only one person for you in the world. And I was like, I don't know about that. I think you can marry, anybody who is a Christian that you were equally yoked with, in temperament and demeanor and fittings and all that kind of stuff. And you can make it work. And he said, no, Dad was meant for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, you're right. Like he was meant for me. Like the word says that God actually plans for us, makes plans for us. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, okay, yeah, he really was meant for me. And he really is my one and only. And I'm so grateful for that. And whether or not I believed that at the beginning or even at different points in our relationship, one thing that was true was once I made those vows, to him, he's my husband. And so, yeah, God needs for us to figure it out. Now that doesn't mean that we say okay to wickedness or, evil or that kind of stuff. So that's not for today. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how to figure out how to find your spouse. So let's get to the slides because, well, we'll do that in just a second. So we met, and this was so perfectly for me. He was at a workstation at Belmont University, and he was actually working there. He had just moved back to Nashville after 2 years of working for American Airlines. And I was a student at Belmont, and it was my second year. And I was going to just work on some paperwork and stuff that I needed to get set for the school year. And I was waiting for his coworker, who I didn't know he had actually dated her that summer. But anyway, whatever, he didn't stay with her, so okay. But it was like really short. Like he told me later, like his dating relationships except for one, and were like 6 weeks long, and then he was like, you're not the one, and moved on. So that was interesting for me to learn about him. And he was older than I was. And so he's sitting at his desk at work, and I'm waiting for his coworker, who was this girl that he had been dating, or woman he had been dating, but they weren't really in relation. He had just like broken it off. And he had a journal next to his desk. And I am a prayer journaler. I've been a prayer journaler since I was 13, but I was a journaler even before that. And so to see a guy who had a prayer journal on his desk was like very intriguing. And then his first name was Brian, which is my favorite brother. I have 5 brothers. My favorite brother, his name is Brian. And actually I have 6 brothers. One is a stepbrother. Yeah, Samantha, my husband's 6.5 years older than I am. So yeah, so I was 19. He was on the cusp of turning 25, and I was like, wow, you're really old. Anyway, I thought he was old, but he was still really good looking. So just being honest. So he had a prayer journal next to his workstation, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never met a guy who had a prayer journal. And he's an older man. He already had his degree, and was working, and he was dressed really nicely. Like, oh my gosh, like he was wearing these rings and these bracelets. He was very metro. Like he had these manicured sideburns that were oh so 90s. Like if you remember Luke Perry from 90210, he had those sideburns. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so awesome. Anyway, so I was like, yeah, he's nice. And then he had my favorite brother's name, Brian. And that brother was like not in my life anymore. So I grieved deeply. I grieved deeply that I lost my brother. So to have this man with my brother's name, that like kind of was like, dunk, and then that my stepdad, I had a stepdad name with the last name of Smith, and my name had been Smith for many years. And then I found out he didn't actually adopt me. So I changed my name back, and I was heartbroken over that. So here is this man in front of me. He's got my favorite brother's first name, my stepdad, whom I loved, his last name. And I was just intrigued. I didn't really think much about it. He asked for my phone number. I don't even remember him asking for my phone number, but I accidentally gave him my phone number at home in San Diego, not at college. So his first time calling me, he actually had a conversation with my mom, which was very interesting. So anyway, it took a while for us to figure things out, but we had so many amazing moments in our relationship. First of all, we were committed to friendship. Second of all, we were committed to sexual purity. And I mean, right out of the gate, I remember the first time he came over for dinner, I was like, I don't know what your story is, but I'm not sleeping with you. And he got the biggest grin on his face. And I'm not even kidding. That's how bold I was. And I can't believe I'm saying that right now, but it's true. I said that. I was like, if that's why you're here, if that's what you're interested in, that's not me. I'm not doing that. So that's that. And he got the biggest grin on his face. And I remember like our first official date, we talked for hours and hours and hours, and it was such a sweet date. And we went to this little French cafe on 21st Avenue in the Vanderbilt area near Belmont. And it was just, it was really magical for me. I'd wanted to go to that restaurant forever. And so when he asked me where we wanted to go, I'm like, let's go there. So anyway, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but what I want to get to is he said something very interesting to me, which was I told him, I'm getting over somebody. I think I'm going to marry that other guy. And so if you want to hang out, that's great. But I'm not sleeping around. I'm focused on Jesus, and I've got a real focus for my life and my vision and what I'm doing. And I don't know what you want, but this is what I'm doing. But if you want to hang out, we can hang out. So we did. And he actually told me, and this was powerful, ladies. He said, I'm going to pursue you until you tell me not to. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So after about 6 weeks, I like, I had a lot of guy friends. And after about 6 weeks, I was like, I think I'm going to like maybe not spend as much time with my guy friends anymore. And I think this is kind of getting a little bit more, meaningful. I wouldn't say exclusive. I would say meaningful. Because I knew that I wanted to marry. And I knew from the time I was 13, maybe even before, I knew that I was looking for a godly man. I knew that I was looking for somebody who loved God. And so if you know what you're looking for, that is a huge benefit to moving forward in your dating relationships. And if you're dating just to date, then this webinar is not for you. It's just not, because what I'm going to tell you is all about like the best way to love somebody, the best way to love somebody else, and the best way to love yourself is to know what you want and to honor God with that. And to know from God's perspective what he wants for you. He doesn't want you to go through heartbreak. He doesn't want you to go through discouragement. He doesn't want you to go through, bonding and then breaking up and bonding and breaking up. Like that's not the best way for you. And that's not the best way for those in your life. Like, I'm just saying this might not be for you, but if it is, then hang on because it gets better. So anyway, after a year and a half, my husband did propose. We did get married. We've been married for 22 years. And the marriage part is a whole nother story of God maturing me and him through so many different circumstances. But I can honestly say that now is absolutely the best time in our relationship. And I'm just so grateful that I get to say that I get to share that with our sons who are becoming young adults. And we've raised them from a young age to be thinking of marriage. And our son even said, like, it was never even an option to date. Like, it was just never, and you might disagree with me. That's okay. This isn't for you. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But this is for those who know that they want to get married. This is for those who know that they want to honor God with that relationship. This is for those who know that they just need a little help getting focused on what to look for and how to look for it because they're discouraged. So if that's you, go ahead and say yes. And I'm so excited to move on and tell you more about some things that you can do right now to get from looking and dating to actually meeting and marrying your spouse. Sound good? Awesome. Okay. So let me just share this. I've got to do this first. Hold on. There we go. That. And then how do I do this again? I think I need to go over here. Yeah. And present. Oh, hold on. I got to do share screen. That's right. Present. Share screen. There we go. No. Here. Awesome. Awesome. Here we go. Okay. I'm a little ahead of myself. All right. So dating to married, how we met and how to meet and marry your spouse. So there we are. This is like 2 weeks ago. We were at the Opryland Hotel here in Nashville, and we were walking around. This was right outside where the Oak Ridge Boys do their concerts. We didn't go to the concert, but it was just so much fun to walk around. I'd actually never walked around there. So if you're looking for a great date spot, go walk around the Opryland Hotel. They have a bunch of restaurants too. So you might want to go and have dinner there. But yeah, this was absolutely awesome. Time well spent. And I went back later with some friends. We walked for literally 2.5 hours and we still didn't see everything. So it's a great, great date spot. All right. So step 1 is to make a list of all the characteristics that you want in faith, finances, fitness, and family. Make a list, make a list, make a list. If you know what you want in the person that you want to marry, if you know you want them to be a Christian, you want them to actually have a daily habit of being in the Word, of actually reading the Word of God, if you want them to be committed to a church family, if you want them to, what else? Be somebody who actually praises God and serves others. Write all those things down because you can't change somebody. So if you meet somebody and they're not that way, you're not going to change them. You can pray for them and you can hope that they change, but you can't actually change anybody else, only yourself. So write down what you want. Like I knew that I wanted a guy who loved the Lord with all of his heart. I knew that I wanted him to know the word better than I did. And I remember that even came up when we were getting to know each other because he was very quiet and he was not super self-revealing. And so, but he would be self-revealing at just the right moment, which was very interesting. So it's his personality type. So I remember this one time I was going to break it off, and it was pretty early on, like within the first 2 months. And I remember he called on a Saturday, and I said, well, we need to talk because I'm actually going to break things off. And he's like, why is that? And I said, because you're not passionate about Jesus. And I am, and I have to have that. And he said, well, why don't you think I'm passionate about Jesus? And I said, because you never talk about him. And he's like, well, what do you want to know? And I said, what do you mean? What do I want to know? I want to know, like, if you're not passionate about him, then I don't know what to ask you. And he's like, well, what does being passionate about Jesus mean to you? And so I answered what I thought, I was like, well, it means, being excited about him and talking about him and sharing him with other people. And he's like, okay, so tell me about Jesus. And so he started just asking me all these questions. And then I was like, I was kind of tongue tied, actually. Like I couldn't articulate that much in that moment. And I said, well, what about you? Like that, I want to know what you think. And for the next couple of hours, he started breaking down like the systematic theology of the Bible and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, okay, you know more than I do. All right, you're invested in your belief system and you believe in Jesus and you love him. Other things that I saw in my husband were, I remember this one time when we were really early, like the first month, less than the first month. I remember we were actually, might have been a little bit further along because we went on a road trip to go see East Tennessee from Nashville. I'd never seen East Tennessee and it was in the fall. And as soon as he came in the door, he said, hey, how are you? I'm good. Yeah, we're getting ready to go. Okay, I'm ready to go. And he said, hey, could you pray for my grandma? She's just not feeling well. And I was like, what? That is amazing. Like, you want me to pray for your grandma? I love that. I love that you want me to pray. B, I love that you want me to pray for your grandma. C, I love that you love your grandma. So I was like, so bing, 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 bing. That goes into family. What characteristics do you want in the man of your dreams, in the husband, in the because he's not just your hangout buddy for dates, right? He's also the person that you're going to make financial decisions with. He's also the person that you're going to go to church with and serve God with. He's also the person that you're going to either walk in health and wholeness in your body or not. He's also the person that's going to raise your children. So who is that guy and how does he treat his family and what is his heart toward them? These are all really, really, really important questions. So I wanted somebody who absolutely loved their family of origin. I wanted to know that they cared about, especially their mom, their dad, their siblings, all that stuff. And my husband did. And then I also wanted fitness. And when I met my husband, he was like, yeah, let's go walking and stuff. Well, I had no idea the level of chocolate addiction that my husband had. I had no idea. So there are going to be things that come out after the wedding. And honestly, there's no way for a lot of these things to come out until you're married, unless you see them ahead of time. Some things you can know, like you can know if they're fit. Like my husband would go to play basketball. My husband would hang out with other people that when they were hanging out, they were playing basketball. I'm like, oh, you hang out with people that play basketball? Like that was not part of my life. But I loved going for walks and I loved going for hikes and I loved going to the beach and I loved swimming. Like I loved physical activity in those areas. And then I knew that my husband had been super athletic growing up and was a quarterback and all that kind of stuff in football. And he was very into sports, although I was not. And so I knew that he cared about fitness and physical activity, and then finances. So I remember one of the coolest moments in our dating relationship was when I looked on his bookshelf, and on his bookshelf this was like 25 years ago, Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace Workbook was on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just heard of Dave Ramsey. Like back then he was very new. And I was like, oh, I just found out about him. You like him too? That's so awesome. And it was very interesting. It's very telling when you're dating somebody to look at their bookshelf, or to look at their Audible, or to look at their, yeah, if they won't let you look at their phone, that's a massive red flag. But maybe you don't want to share your phone right away with a stranger. So it's better to meet somebody that you know from a group of other people. But anyway, that's another topic. But this is how I met my husband. So step one is to make a list of all the characteristics that you want in faith, finances, fitness, and family. Step two is, where does a person like that hang out, and go there. So for me, I thought I would probably meet my husband in church. Um, and I did meet a lot of people in church, and I did meet a lot, but most of the people that I met were actually at the university. And that was really the hub of activity. That's where I spent most of my time at that age. And then when I would go home for summers, I did meet a lot of guys in the college group and stuff like that. And I met a lot of girls too. But go where your characteristics, where that person is going to hang out. Like if you're going to bars and stuff, but you're looking for a godly husband, that is a little tricky. Like, why would somebody who was passionate about God be hanging out at a bar? I don't know. Maybe they're evangelizing. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it depends on your age group, I don't know. But where does a person like that hang out, and go there? And also be that person that attracts that guy. But that's another thing. So step two is kind of easy, in my opinion. Go where a person with your same, with that characteristic of things, go where they hang out. And don't just make it about like what you're interested in now. Really make it about your values. Really make it about the characteristics that are going to transcend trends or transcend time, like physical activity. Somebody who values their body is going to care about what they eat. They're going to care about what they put in their body. They're going to care about having a healthy routine and a daily lifestyle that's healthy. Listen, ladies, I'm just telling you, and guys too, you can't change anybody else. So if you're dating somebody and they're not a morning person and you are, that's going to be a challenge. If you're, thinking of marrying somebody and, they have a food addiction. I had a food addiction before I met my husband, and actually did a 12-step program for that. So like if they're dealing with it, that's great. But if you're in a relationship with somebody and they have those things, it's just going to make it so much harder. So just because somebody's available doesn't mean they're the right person to pursue. Trust that God has somebody better. And if the reason you're going into a relationship is to fill a hole in you, just stop right now. Just like go be with Jesus, go get around some friends of the same gender and hang out with them, spend time with them if they are pursuing Jesus, and bask in the love of Jesus for you. Because when you get married, it's not, they're going to fix it for you. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is it'll be more like 2 ticks and no dog. Like a good spouse is going to support you, but they're not going to be able to fix you. And so whatever is broken in you, spend some time investing in you. Oh, this is so good. I did tons of counseling before I got married. I did tons of counseling before I dated, and I've done counseling since then too. But really like understanding your pain, understanding your feelings, building that into a healthy routine of self-awareness every morning and every night is going to be a game changer for you that will help set you up for an awesome marriage and an awesome family life. Like, I kid you not, I've been working on routines for 25 years, and I'm just now really starting to get these routines down, and I'm kind of kicking myself. But the resources that I've used to get that healing, they weren't around 25 years ago, but they're around now. So things I recommend: the Boundaries Workbook. I recommend Laying Down the Rails. If you're not a habit person, get Laying Down the Rails. That's another book. Another thing I recommend is Emotionally Healthy Spirituality and the relationships course, discipleship, leadership, emotionally healthy spirituality is amazing, amazing course. So all these things together are going to set you up to be the kind of person that has an awesome marriage and an awesome long-term family life, which is what we're after. Or it's what I'm after. If you're not after it, that's fine. But that's what I'm advocating. Okay, step 3 is, who do you need to be to attract that person? So I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. But when you think about this person and you've written down their characteristics, who do you need to be to attract that? Like, we didn't talk a whole lot about finances, but finances are really important. And if you're not taking full responsibility for your finances, be on the lookout for anybody who's okay with that, because anybody who's okay with that is probably not taking full responsibility for their finances either. And that can be really, really messy. So many statisticians have said that one of the number one reasons for divorce is finances. And so getting that squared away and bringing assets to the marriage instead of debt is going to be huge. I had a friend who, he he had debt before he got married. He made a decision that he wanted to follow hard after Jesus. And when he made that decision, he sold everything. He did the Dave Ramsey plan. He got a bike. He paid off all of his debt. He asked for promotions at work so that he could pay off that debt. And then he was able to get married, and it's been great that he's been able to support his wife and their children, and she wanted to stay home with the kids. And so like not being forced to depend on that second income has been huge for them. It totally changed their family. And we did something similar. I was in my undergrad program when we got married. My husband was in a master's degree for biblical studies. And we looked at our finances and we just said, we don't want to start our marriage with debt. But we also want to honor God with our relationship. So we knew we wanted to get married. So let's get married. And then we made it our goal to get out of debt as fast as possible. So we actually sold everything that we had. And, it was, I don't know that I recommend this now, but it was a good plan then. So we sold everything that we had. We both became big rig truck drivers. We lived in the truck. We paid off $33,000 in debt it was in 16 months. And then we had the big 3 happen. So know that things can upset that financial plan, but having a focus for your finances and being on the same page about what your financial goals are, even before you get into engagement, is huge. Oh my gosh, it's so important. Okay. So who do you need to be to attract that person? In your faith, in your finances, in your fitness, and in your current relationships. Like, one of the mistakes I made was when I went back to college, I didn't pursue female friendships as much as I could have. My best friends from the year before all went in different directions. It was really hard. Like, sometimes it's hard going back to college when people go in different directions. So I had my very best friend from my freshman year in college. She moved back to New Mexico. She left Nashville. I was so sad about that. Then I had another friend who got married, and so she wasn't living on campus anymore. And then I had other friends that I was living in the apartments, kind of off campus. So if I had it to do over again, I'd probably stay in the dorms, because that would have kept me in proximity to more female friendships. And also I would have, I kind of went through a faith crisis about that same time too. So I would have stayed plugged in to the body of Christ. Actually, this is really interesting. So I was going to a charismatic church when my husband and I started dating, and he was not charismatic at all. And he went to a reformed church. And so it was really funny. I remember we would talk about these things and we'd be like, okay, this is biblical. This is not biblical. Let's wrestle through this. Ultimately, we ended up at his church, and it was actually a really safe place for me to struggle with those faith questions. And I'm so grateful that we struggled with those faith questions, and we were in community. But I would just say, like, that was one thing that I could have worked harder on, was cultivating those healthy female relationships. Because something I've learned over 22 years of marriage is that it's not just you and your spouse. If it's just the two of you, it's you can't possibly meet all the needs of your spouse, and your spouse cannot possibly meet all of your needs. You need other people. And so just knowing that, and that that's okay, and that you're not See, I thought, oh, I'm neglecting my number one relationship if I spend time over here with these ladies, but that's not true. And there's a whole lot of wisdom that can go into that. And maybe I'll talk about that more on another webinar. But you need other people in your life. So get those people before you try to find a guy. Talking to my girls. And for guys, get guy friends. Seek them out. They are worth the investment. Guy friends who love God, who are going to keep you accountable, who are going to help you, who are going to pour into you, who are going to want God's best for you without being religious or, like heavy-handed. Guys who are seeking healthy relationships themselves and who are investing in learning and growing. Those are the types of people you want around you as you seek a spouse. And it makes such a difference. I will say that we moved to San Diego for my husband to go to seminary at the 1 year mark in our relationship. And we went to a church there that was awesome for us. And it was great. We were really close with our pastor and his wife. We were really close with our small group. We were very committed to our small group. And so that was a great way to lead up to being engaged. And so I will say that was awesome. Oh, hey, Beth. Hey, Christina. Good to see you guys. Awesome. Glad you're here. Thank you. Step 4 is to just go get after it. So when you've done step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 is go get him or her. Go be where that person is. Spend time with that person. Find that person. But remember the characteristics that you're after. You want the characteristics of faith, finances, fitness, and family and relationships. You want those things. You want to see them growing in those things and making those things important to them. You want them to be that kind of person that already has all that going on, because you will not change someone. You cannot change someone. You can pray all you want. And yes, God answers prayer. My husband loves salads, but it took 20 years. So he said he wanted to be healthy. And pay attention to this. He said he wanted to be healthy, but it took 20 years for him to fully embrace a new appetite. So lesson learned there. All right, so I'm minimizing my screen here. Let me go back to this. And so glad to see you guys. So are there any questions coming up? Any comments, questions, concerns? I'm so excited to be with you again, just revisiting these 4 steps again real quickly. The 4 steps are to make a list of all the characteristics that you want in a spouse, and especially focus on faith, family, fitness, and finances. And then think about, where does that person hang out, and start hanging out in that place or those places. And then who do you need to become to attract that person? This is great. I was already working so hard on myself in this season, and I'm so glad I was. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for my marriage, and I'm so grateful that my husband and I met. So step 4, go get him or her. And I've just got to tell you, like, it is such a sweet thing to be married to my husband. And we are big sinners. We've made lots of mistakes, but God has been faithful to us, and he has kept us from making the really big mistakes. And he will keep you from making the really big mistakes too, if you ask him. And he will help you from making the small mistakes too. And he will give you grace to learn and grow. But I just want to plant like a shower full of seeds. We had this bag full of sunflower seeds. It was a 50-pound bag of sunflower seeds. I just want you to imagine all those seeds of love and goodness. If you are having a very, very, very strong desire for marriage, then all this content is for you. All this insight is for you. It's for you to take it, hold it, own it. Ask me any questions you have. And for those who are ready to move forward with actually making a plan to get after this and to deal with any insecurities that are coming up or any roadblocks that you're experiencing, then reach out to me privately, 615-933-1331. And thank you so much. Please, if you will share this webinar on your Facebook page, on your YouTube channel, whatever. Share it wherever you can. I am so passionate about seeing the next generation of believers know that a healthy, godly marriage is possible and that they don't need to be sleeping around to find their spouse. They don't. And so praise God for that. The right one is out there for you. And I can't wait to hear your story of how you find your spouse. God bless you and see you next time. Bye-bye.